When we learn to add, a lot of us started out by counting piles of things to find out how much we have all together. If we want to add with negatives, we can use chipboards to have that same idea. Remember, on a chipboard, our black chips represent positive values and our red chips represent negative values. Let's start out by using what we know about adding positive values first. If I want to add positive 6 plus positive 2, I first need to put 6 positive chips on my board. To that, I can then add 2 more positive chips. Since all of my chips are positive and match, we can simply count up to see how much we have all together. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 positive chips. So positive 6 plus positive 2 gives me positive 8. I can use that same idea to add with negatives. If I want to add negative 6 plus negative 2, I can start out by putting 6 negative chips on the board. To add the negative 2, I can put 2 more negative chips on the board. Again, since all of my chips match, we can simply count up to see how much we have all together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So negative 6 plus negative 2 gives us negative 8. If we notice, our signs match throughout on both problems. Positive 6 plus positive 2 gives us positive 8, and negative 6 plus negative 2 gives us negative 8. Since all our chips on this board are positive, our sum is going to have to be positive because those are the only ones we have to work with. Since all of our chips on this board are negative, our sum is going to have to be negative because that's the only color chip we have to work with. But what happens when we want to start mixing up positive and negatives into the same problem? Over here, we're going to want to add positive 6 plus negative 2. And over here, we're going to want to add negative 6 plus positive 2. Well, let's start by doing our positive 6 plus negative 2. We have positive 6 on the board, so I'm going to add negative 2. Now that we have both black and red chips on the board, we have to think what their combined value is going to be. A positive 1 and a negative 1 are opposites and cancel each other out for a combined value of 0. So both of my red chips are going to cancel out 2 of my black chips. So that means I only have 4 black chips that are going to represent a value. So positive 6 plus negative 2 is going to give me a sum of positive 4. Over here, I'm starting out with negative 6. I'm going to add my positive 2 to the board. Again, my 2 black chips are going to cancel out 2 red chips to create 0 pairs. So only my 4 red chips are going to have value. So negative 6 plus positive 2 gives me negative 4. If we're looking for patterns, 4 is actually the difference of 6 and 2. Only over here, my sum came out to be positive 4, and over here, my sum came out to be negative 4. Well, if we start here, positive 6 plus negative 2, our positive 6 has a greater absolute value than negative 2. So our sum is also going to be positive because we can see there are more positive chips on the board than there are negative chips. Same thing over here. Negative 6 still has a greater absolute value than positive 2. And we can see that because there are more negative chips than positive chips on the board. So we can safely say that when I'm adding mismatched signs, or positive plus negative, the sign on my sum is going to depend on which number has the greater absolute value. Let's try illustrating out a few more chipboard problems on paper. To start with, we're going to do positive 3 plus positive 1. Instead of using actual chips, I'm just going to use positive signs to illustrate my positive values. So I'm going to start by putting 3 positives on the board. To that, I'm going to add positive 1. Since all of my chips are positive, I can simply count up how many I have, and positive 3 plus positive 1 is going to give me positive 4. Let's look to see how that would look with negatives. Instead of using chips, I'm just going to use a negative sign to illustrate negatives. So 7. To that, I'm going to add another 2 negatives. Since everything on my board is negative, I can simply count up how many I have, and negative 7 plus negative 2 is going to give me negative 9. Now let's look at where our chips don't match. I'm going to start by putting negative 5 on the board. And to that, I'm going to add 4 positives. Remember, a negative 1 and a positive 1 cancel each other out to form a 0 pair. So the only chip that's going to hold value is my 1 negative. So negative 5 plus positive 4 gives me a total of negative 1. Let's look at our last one. We're going to start with positive 8. And to that, I'm going to add negative 6. My positive 1 and my negative 1 pair up to cancel each other out and form a 0 pair. So that means I have only 2 positive chips left that hold any value. So positive 8 plus negative 6 gives me a total of positive 2.